I'm in the Whitney State Forest. This is a small forest located about 3 miles south of Warrenton, Virginia. Never been here before, and I recently moved to Warrenton, so I figured I'd come check this out. There's the road you come in on up there, and it's got a nice gravel area here. You can see a couple of trucks with horse trailers. Could actually park quite a few cars here. There's my little red car. A bench to sit on. And we're going to start out over here, going down that old road. I'm pretty sure, from what I've read, that that road will take us to some old ruins here. So let's get started. This is going to be a short hike, just a couple of miles. So I figured I'd get it in before it gets too hot here. We're in the dog days of summer here in Virginia. So it's probably 90 degrees already and high humidity. So anyway, let's get started and see what happens. Three-tenths of a mile into my hike. I'm not going to bother calling out elevations. This is all around 500 feet above sea level, and it's relatively flat. Anyway, I walked out of the forest, and according to the write-up I have, this area here was clear-cut by the Forest Service so that it could regenerate new forest. So if you look over there, you can see trees starting to pop up. So anyway, we're just going to continue following this path, and I believe it will eventually take us back into the forest down there and towards the ruins. Seven-tenths of a mile into my hike, and here I'm just getting ready to re-enter the mature part of the forest here, and I came across this. So there's your first outbuilding there. Here's where I came from, the clear-cut area they replanted with shortleaf pine. And we got this, and then we're going to continue on down this way. So there's that first outbuilding. When you come down this way, there's no sign here or anything, but I see a little trail leading off to the left, and I do see a sign, overgrown sign down there, and something back in there looks like some sort of a ruin of a structure. So let's go back in here and see what we can find. Okay, so just a couple 100 yards off that main trail is what looks like part of an old house, I guess. It's pretty overgrown here, and I'm not a big fan of ticks, even though I sprayed myself. Well, I'll go back in here a little ways and see if I can get some better shots, but it looks pretty overgrown back in here. But I guess this is where the house was. Real close to the old the ruins of the stone house is this bench somebody put in. I suppose in the wintertime or years ago you could look out over the yard here under the trees and have a nice view. And the house is right over there. So I'm going to head on back out that trail back to the main trail, and we'll continue on. Walnuts. Up there's some loblolly pines. There's a sign back there that the Forest Service put in saying they thinned out the trees here a little bit so that what's left can get really, really big. We're heading down this way. We got to cross a creek. One mile into my hike, and here's the creek. We're crossing over it right here. Here's where I came from. And nice little creek here. And there's a culvert, and the road just goes straight across, and there's some evidence of horses, and I met up with the two riders earlier in my hike. Two women out here riding their horses. So let's keep going. Okay, so the creek crossing's right back there. As soon as you cross over the creek, you'll get to a little fork in the road. That's the main trail heading uphill, but instead, turn to the right here, and we're going to go down this way. We're going to follow the stream downstream and eventually cross back over it, heading back towards the parking lot. .1 miles into my hike, and this is where the trail curves back and recrosses the creek, and we start heading back towards home base. There's where I came from. You come down here, fortunately there isn't a lot of water in here right now. If it's been raining, you're going to have to wade across, but I can probably get across here, hopefully without falling. .3 miles into my hike, I stepped off the trail to try to get a couple of pictures of the main house here. This is part of a large estate, North Wales estate. I think it's around 1,500 acres currently. It was probably a lot bigger than that. I'll have to look up the rest of the history when I get home. I'll try and provide a little more information on the map talk. It looks like over there's some kind of a church maybe, or some sort of a meeting house. I don't know if this thing will stay focused as a zoom or not. Let's see what happens. Here's a little pan of the Virginia countryside here in Fauquier County. About 3 miles west of Warrenton, Virginia. Really nice out here. .6 miles into my hike. There's where I came from. So I went around in a big loop, and over that way is where that large North Wales estate is, and it brings you right on back to this main trail. So I'm back to this three-door stable, and from here on back I think I'm just going to retrace my steps. 1.9 miles into my hike, I'm re-entering the forest, the old growth forest, and if I was to completely retrace my steps, I'd go back that way, but I'm going to take this side trail here. I think I missed a couple of side trails already, either that or they're just completely overgrown right now, but I see this one here, and this will take me a little closer to the perimeter of the forest on my way back. So I'm going to go this way and see what this is like. Well, look who I found in the hole in this tree. I'm not going to tell you where he is. I'm going to let you see if you can find him yourself. So I'm headed back to the parking lot now. Let me see. Hang on. I am at 2.6 miles into my hike. And on the way back, I missed one turn off on a side trail. I think maybe it was overgrown or I just missed it. So I took another one, and then basically I just started wandering around in this little forest of 150 acres. There's a couple of roads in here like this one, and then there's all sorts of little footpaths, horse trails. The forestry department has a map, but they really ought to go in there, and some of these trails are blazed different colors, but the map, everything shows up in like red. So it's not a very good map. But anyway, you really can't get lost in this place. Just take yourself a compass, a topo map, your GPS and your wits, and you'll find your way around. That's a nice little hike. This is a map of today's hike. The quadrangle name is Warrenton, 1994. And I hiked in a small state forest here called Whitney State Forest. It's about 3 miles south of the town of Warrenton. This green area here is Whitney State Forest. It used to be part of a large estate which is here, called the North Wales Estate. The big house here and this ruin of a smaller house over here date back to about 1776. This house is still standing, looking good. I've got some pictures of that for you. This one's nothing but basically a rubble pile at this point. Anyway, from Warrenton, you come down on this route 684, right here to the edge of the forest, and you park right here. And then when you get out of your car, you'll see that there's an old road, gravel road that comes back in here. So you just follow the gravel road in, and eventually you'll reach an area, you'll reach an area where you come out into a clear-cut area, and you'll walk along the clear-cut area ways, and then you'll go back into the forest. It's not shown, the way it is here is not exactly the way it is today, as far as what's green and what's not green. But anyway, you come back into the forest, and when you get to right about here, you'll see an old green wooden stable with 3 doors on it. And then just a little ways past that, you turn left. There's a little trail here that goes back up here to this high point on the hill. And this is where the old house is, which was called the Ashton house. Well, at this point, it's really just a rubble pile. Probably if you go in here in the wintertime, you might find some other old, collapsed outbuildings and stuff. I didn't really see anything today, but this is in the middle of the summer, and, the weeds are really high right now. So they come back out here, and then you follow this main trail on down until you cross a stream. Now, I just sort of guessed at where this trail went, but as soon as you cross this stream, you turn to the right and you follow this downstream, and eventually you'll recross heading back up this way. Okay, and then from here all the way up to here, there are some opportunities along the way to look out on this huge expanse of property and even see this house here, which is gosh, I don't know what the name of it is, but the whole estate's called the North Wales Estate. And my understanding is today it's about 1,471 acres. So you come on up here. Now, what I ended up doing was I intended to follow the edge of the forest up here, but I never did see this turnoff, so I turned right and came back this way and basically retraced my steps until I got to here, and then I saw another trail veering off to the left, so I went this way, and then that put me back out onto the edge of the forest, and I followed that for a ways until I got over here to this creek, and then I turned this way, came back down onto the main trail, and then I veered off to the right and came back to the parking lot like that. If you go to the Virginia Department of Forestry and look up this Whitney State Forest, they have a map in there that shows all the trails. There's a lot more trails in here than what I've shown here, but they all end up taking you either back here or they take you to one of these other main trails. So they're like little connector trails. This area here is a nice a place for a fairly short hike. Mine ended up being about 2.8 miles, and it's only 300 feet of ascent. This is all fairly flat. Not perfectly flat, but it's fairly flat terrain. And that was the hike for today.